Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Mark de Grasse, who's the president of digitalmarketer.com. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass. But try to keep your answers to one word or one sentence only, okay?
You got it.
All right, so the first one, at what age do you want to retire?
95.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
10 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Oh, that is a hard one. Shoot.
Okay, that'll have to be a
Get
pass.
my first social
Favorite color? Favorite color?
Blue.
What time of day are you most inspired?
6 a.m.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
5.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
Ooh, that's a good one. AR.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Ooh. Orange.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Oh, God. Dorsey, I guess.
The biggest mistake of your career.
Selling my first company.
How do you relax?
Workout.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
4.
A habit of yours that you hate.
Shyness.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Pattern recognition.
Your favorite Netflix show.
Actually, there's a new cyberpunk series. That's pretty good.
Okay. So that's the end of the rapid fire round. You scored almost like 99%, except one question, which you took a long time to think about. But anywho, let's move on to the long form questions. The first one is, do you agree that well-designed visual content can increase customer interaction and move prospective customers further along the buyer journey more quickly?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so here
That was
you
that
can
long form.
elaborate because
Okay.
we're out of the rapid fire round.
Yeah, what's funny is the visual aspect. I always tell people, and actually I did a photo shoot last night, and I was talking to the
Mm,
photographer, and I was saying, everything that we do in modern society is visual, and not just visual, because we always say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but video or even just animated content is worth how many words if you do it that way. So I think from a bunch of different angles, the visual aspects and the continuity behind both your message and your visuals could have just astounding impact on everything that you do. Not just say, from your advertising side, because that's what everybody usually refers to when they think of creatives. They think, okay, here's the paid ad. But if you look at, the consistency between the paid ads, your website design, and even your customer service elements, your forms that you give people to fill out, like all of those things actually impact the interaction of people onto your brand. So I could talk about that for quite a while, but I think it's hugely impactful, actually almost as impactful these days as the copy.
And so, what are some of the tools you're using to make your visual content?
I use the whole Adobe suite. So After Effects, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro. And then, nowadays, since we work with such a big community of marketers, I've been transferring a lot of my stuff onto, universally used platforms like Canva. From graphic designers are always like, poo, Canva, it's horrible and blah, blah. I'm like, man, I could create so much content on
Mhm.
Canva in like seconds. And it's not just because it's easier than Photoshop. It's because they pull all these elements from everywhere, where I don't have to go find a stock photo, and I don't have to go, look at Pinterest for inspiration. I don't have to go to all these places. I can actually just go on Canva and just pull everything at once. So as much as graphic designers will probably hate it, Canva is actually super cool. So those are the primary ones. And then I try to do everything else in app. So especially with the social media elements, the TikTok and Instagram and all those different ones, they actually give you credit if you use the in-app tools. So I've been trying to make an effort to actually use those different elements, especially with TikTok. You have those trending filters and all that kind of stuff. So if you just try to use it, it actually expands your creativity, and you're doing better on the platform just for employing what they give you.
So visual aspects is one thing, but there's another trend that's out and about, and that is hyper personalization in marketing. So do you
Mm.
believe marketers can tailor content to specific products, marketing channels, and languages by considering each buyer's persona?
Yes. Yes, I think it's actually the first place you should start whenever you're producing anything really. Like we call it the customer avatar digital marketer, where you have your customer avatar canvas, where you analyze actually the demographics and who this is. And but then we do what's called the before and after grid, where we say, okay, your ideal customer avatar, where were they before they started using your product or service? And then where were they after they started using your product or service? And the more detail and story you put behind those two elements, the more effective everything that you create will be. So my favorite example is actually in our e-commerce certification, where we have Lake Dad Daryl, and the company that was actually built for sells lake stuff, toys and things for boats and wakeboarding, all that kind of stuff. And before, Lake Dad Daryl had crummy equipment, and his kids didn't like to go to the lake, and nobody wanted to join him on his boat because the boat was lame, and he was really sad. And so he ended up not going to the lake, not spending as much time with his family, and he was miserable. And then he found this sports equipment provider, and all his stuff is the best, and everybody wants to go on his boat, and everybody wants to join his barbecues, and his kids love going to the lake, and everybody's happy, happy family. He's a happy guy. Everybody loves Lake Dad Daryl. So just putting that fictional story behind this person, it automatically, you could visualize the person, and then now you can say like, oh, what would reach out to this guy specifically? And then since you have that avatar, now you're able to create anything you want. So, and you could do that with any product within the same company, or you could just have a general avatar for, here's our ideal customer or our favorite customer, and then you just pitch it to them. Otherwise, what happens most of the time is you run your demographics, and then you say, okay, well, people are reacting to this type of copy or this type of visual. And then what you have is a really, disengaged approach to visualization. And then everything is individual case studies. So it's like, okay, well, we're selling this product to this person, and then here's the visual. And then you're selling this product to this person, here's the visual. So if you don't have that, what you have is just a really divided approach and a lack of cohesiveness in terms of your visuals that doesn't reinforce all your other visuals. So that's really what you're trying to do with that consistent approach to your marketing style, is allows you to, one, create way more creatives because you're not having to think of new stuff all the time. Plus, all your other creatives will actually lead to the other creatives because they look similar enough where people, even if they don't realize they're doing it, they're categorizing your content, and they're knowing like, oh, I think I liked that before, and oh, look, there's more of it. And now you could lead them down what we call the customer value journey, which allows them to consistently be hit with all your visuals. And now you're building brand recognition rather than just making a sale or getting a click.
And what do you think are the best methods for balancing promotional intent when it comes to brand with customer intent? So, how can we offer something valuable and innovative enough to compel customers to act when their attention is obviously limited?
Well, I think for that type, I like doing series of content. So rather than just thinking of like, okay, I'm going to create this awesome piece of content, do several pieces at the same time that are similar, different enough, but similar enough where if somebody found one piece of content, they could actually see, go down the path of consuming all of the content. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think the approach is to do more, just to get a real test. Because I think what happens a lot of times is we have, say, an A/B test where you're saying, okay, here's this visual against this visual. People like this visual better, and then you have this visual and this visual. But again, that just separates your approach into a bunch of different methods, no brand cohesiveness, and no way for people to connect the dots between what you're doing. And so what you have then is just these independent actions, and you'll get results and you'll get numbers and you'll get the metrics and feedback from everything, but you won't get um, I'd say real results, because real results take a little time and they take more effort than we want to give most of the time.
And how important is the ability to pivot the brand based on what you might think the customers want now, or like, how their wants change?
Oh, that's so hard, because I think the whole pivoting thing is uh, it's it's what people want to do all the time. Because I've worked with so many companies where they're just like, you know what, we just need a rebrand. Like, we just need to start from scratch and start fresh and blah, blah, blah. And they'll spend all this time and effort rebuilding everything when they really had what they had before wasn't necessarily bad or wrong. They were just bored with it. So I think it's hard, because most of the time, from I actually did brand development where I worked with like 300 companies who wanted to start brands, and then I built everything out for them. And most of the time, especially when I had somebody who was in business for a while, like a 25-year-old company, and yeah, their branding's antiquated and it's ugly, but it works. And the temptation is always to look at it and be like, oh, well, it's all old and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, is it effective though? Like, do people recognize it? Is ugliness part of the brand? And if you break that part of the brand, are you ruining everything? Because that happens a lot. I see it all the time, and it just breaks my heart, because I'm like, no, you have all this brand authority and it's built off of your ugliness. People don't like that though. Especially business owners. We all want to have the cool brand. We all want to be the cool guy that everybody looks up to. I'm like, oh man, I really want to copy that company's stuff because it's so neat. But if the visualizations and the process that you're going through is really ego driven rather than customer driven, or say, trend driven, then what you have is just a different thing. You didn't trade up from the crummy old car to the brand new supercar. You just traded it for another very similar car, and you're kind of in the same boat, but you just spent tons of resources and time that could have been spent doing something else, like cold calling. It sounds ridiculous, but sometimes it's like, man, if you just spend a little bit of that time, a little bit of that money, just doing a little bit more of what worked since you've been around for a while, you do way better. So, um, yeah, I'd say if you're going to do it right, it requires a lot of discipline, a lot of soul searching in terms of why you're doing it, and then not doing that knee jerk reaction, which is to blow the whole thing up. I think people don't realize they do that a lot. Like, you destroyed everything because you were tired, and your 18-year-old niece said your brand is lame, and then you got offended by that. Then you want to, oh, come on in, we'll rebuild it for you, and you end up with this mess of a 50-year-old company that now looks like it was built by a 12-year-old TikToker, and it's bad.
So, speaking of changes, do you believe that because third-party cookies will no longer be available, leveraging a variety of user data sources to target audiences will aid in the creation of a more personalized and targeted content?
Oh, that's a really good question, because you want to say, I think all marketers will work around the third party cookie issue. Actually, I already know of several that are working around it. They're like, yeah, it
Mm.
doesn't even matter anymore. Like, we pull the data, we get everything we need. We're still doing what we used to do, which is really what I had seen when we made all the changes over the last 12 months. I was like, oh man, old marketing, or not old marketing, but the marketing that we used over the last 15 years is dead. Doesn't work anymore. We got to get back to true marketing and advertising, which I always go back to like Mad Men, where it's like, man, it's a bunch of guys or girls or whoever sitting around a table coming up with ideas and then pitching those ideas and selling those ideas and making it happen. And really nowadays we do that through content creation rather than just an ad, which is how it's done back in the day. But going back to that, but now I see marketers are working around it. There's so much new tech in terms of AI and ways to assess data. And at the end of the day, like, all the privacy laws and stuff is not really stopping any company from collecting your information. That'd be like if you think of our companies, we think, oh yeah, will protect your data. And we do. We protect your data. We're not going to give it to anybody, but we have the data. I have everybody's information. I can look up anything I want and I know everything that you've done, at least within my platform. So I think it's a fallacy to think that that type of tracking is gone. And even though it makes everybody feel better, that we have these things in place, and it's good. You know, you don't want that data put in the wrong hands, and that's what it's supposed to be protected for. But at the end of the day, marketers are still going to use it, and they're going to find a way to get it. And it's not going to change that many things other than what I'm talking about, which is that organic approach to marketing, where we say, hey, instead of tracking you, instead of hitting you up on 50 different places for this ad because I have a cookie on your platform and now I see you everywhere, so I'm just going to keep on hitting you until I get that 100 touch points and then you're going to buy from me. It's going more towards content where I'm going to feed you content. It's not going to look like I'm tracking you because I'm giving you good organic data or good organic content. But at the end of the day, I am tracking you, and I know I know what you're looking for, and I know exactly how to hit you. And I'm not going to stop because why would I do that? Because it's wrong. That's not how anything works. People, if it's effective, makes money, and isn't technically illegal, people are going to keep doing it. So I think we have both. I'd like altruistic side of me says, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to focus on good content. We're going to focus on real connections with our customers, and that's going to give us all the information we need to keep on doing more and building the company. But then the other side is accountants and metrics people, and they're never going to let go because they love that stuff. They love the data. And from a scientific approach, it's the best way to do things, but it takes the soul out of marketing. And I recommend not doing that and instead worrying about connecting with your customer and giving them good stuff because you care about them, and that's your job, is to keep them learning. And if they buy something from you, great. But at the end of the day, your job is really to make their lives better, and you focus on that and everything will be great. But all that other stuff is going to happen still.
And so is this a raging debate at digitalmarketer.com? Could you tell us more about that website again?
Oh, so digitalmarketer.com. Yeah, so when I came in a year ago, I my main goal initially was to rebuild the website into a content platform. So we had 5,000 pages of front end content, and it was not organized at all, really. There's no categorization system, there's no presentation system for how you could connect the data to other data. So what I did was I reformulated the whole navigation of the website, made categorization systems, made subject systems, and keyword systems, all that kind of stuff you need to intuitively help people find information that they're looking for. And so that was my big side because I came from a content side. Now, Digital Marketer itself was actually built off of copywriting and kind of classic digital marketing methods: landing page design, funnel design, follow up design, email drip design, all the stuff all the stuff we teach, which is awesome. And then the core frameworks like the customer value journey, which is walking people from having no awareness of your brand to being a active promotional advocate of your brand, essentially a marketing channel for your brand while they still consume the content that you're creating. So no, it's not really a debate. It's just two sides of the same coin, where it's like the organic approach is happening, the paid advertising and copywriting approach that's happening, and then we now what we've done is we're actually integrating both approaches into a singular approach that just takes advantage of all the tools you have available. And in the meantime, I'm kind of just a content freak, so I just am going to produce as much content as I can all the time, which actually leads to, I don't know, 30 to 50 pieces of long form content a month.
So speaking of organic approaches, then Google is prioritizing visual, acceptable, recent content to build rich SERPs that provide immediate answers. What would be some tips to rank higher on Google in 2022 then?
Yeah, I'd say get as specific as possible. Like really, there's no one question that you is too mundane or boring or unsearched to answer. So I'd say if you could, just make a list of those, and don't just base your list on your analytics research or your answer the public research. Those are good starting points. But if you really get into knowing your customer and really thinking about that avatar that we talked about earlier, then what you'll have is some real questions that people are asking. And so I would focus, instead of focusing on those high volume search, terms and questions, just let go of all of it. Answer questions that would be useful that people are either asking of your brand or that you've seen people ask of your competitors' brands. Just make a list of them and just start typing out the answers. And I'm all about database design, so I would say make a category system on your blog and then systematically answer each question and try to do it in 300 500 words, and then take those answered questions and assemble new articles, because what you'll start finding is you'll have related information, and now instead of just having single answers to questions, you could have an article that's the 5 top answers to this question. And then now you're taking your content, you're building new content that's also useful, but also leads back to the other content. So I would say databases of answered questions is probably the best, easiest approach to start getting ranked. And then do your standard SEO optimization, your backlinking strategies, and all the other stuff. But at the end of the day, if you think like, I'm going to answer 3 commonly asked questions about my product, service, industry trends, then you're going to be set.
So so this is kind of like the quorification of of marketing then, because every website then would aim to become like what these aggregators of answers are doing.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Well, because I always tell people, I'm like, if you're not answering a question on your website, then your competitor is. So there's really no question that you shouldn't be answering, and there's no reason why you shouldn't have it on your website. Because if it's not on your website, then you're sending traffic to Facebook, sending traffic to LinkedIn, sending traffic to YouTube. You're sending traffic everywhere, but the one place you should be driving everybody, which is your website. So yeah, that's like the way I view the future of like how big companies will be, organizing their data, is they'll be essentially libraries of information, where it's like the value is actually in how much info that they can contain, display, and help their users find. And that's going to be the real battle of the future. It's not going to be which ad campaign is going to work. It's going to be like, who has the knowledge base, the public knowledge base, to prove they're the best, to prove that they have the systems that everybody should be using, because they show everybody everything. It's the reason why I like SpaceX so much, because I'm like, man, their content generation is based on all their failure. Like they blow crap up. It explodes and it goes terribly and everything goes wrong, and then they just tell everybody about it. And it's like, man, could you imagine if everybody did that? Like the lessons that other companies would learn, lessons that the customers would learn, if everybody just shared everything they were doing, it would be incredible. It's not going to happen. But, if you look at companies like Harvard Business Review, their platform, we analyzed them a while back, and we found that they were posting 600 times a month on Facebook. And the majority of those posts are for new original content. So whenever anybody has the argument about quantity versus quality, I'm like, well, Harvard does 600 a month, not even trying. That's what they do all the time. And so that's, you can never make too much content, because you're going to, it goes back to just the quantity versus quality. You don't know what quality is, because I've never produced a piece of content where I'm like, this is going to hit, everybody's going to love it, I'm going to get a billion comments, I'm going to get all the traffic, and it's going to blow things up. And it's like, nope, that piece didn't do crap. Now that cat video that you spliced in and spent 5 seconds creating, that's what people want. And you're like, all right, never mind. That's why I always just default to like, I'm going to talk to everybody. I'm going to collect as much content as I can. I'm going to make it easy to find. I'm going to make it consistent to consume. That's a whole nother element that I haven't talked about, but the consumability of content and how you structure it consistently makes a huge difference. That's why if you do have a content approach, and your approach is to send me articles, but you have no way of organizing or standardizing that information, then you're doing that one-off, case study stuff that I talked about earlier, rather than a consistent approach to giving people like, hey, you know what you're going to get here, and that's why you're going to come back. It's not just because I typed into Google and you were the first one. If you think about that, how many times you type into Google, you click on the top link, you consume the content, and then you leave. It had maybe a little bit of brand recognition, but I couldn't tell you the last 5 searches I did and the 5 links I clicked on, right? I mean, it's just, "Oh, thanks, buddy. Take that." It's like going through, Costco and grabbing the food samples. "Oh, this is good." Yep. I'm not gonna buy the thing. I might. It would have to be so, like, incredibly amazing that I'm like, "Okay, I have to buy this item because this one little bite was so good that I have to have this." No, you're gonna be like, chances are you'll probably have to consume it several times, and then you'll be at some friend's house 3 months later, and you're like, "Oh, I love this meal," and they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's that spice from Costco," and they're like, "Oh, you know what? I tried this before, and that's now I'm gonna go back and get it." So it's that long-term process that everybody just forgets about and instead just says, "Well, I did this article and it ranked number 1 on blah, blah, blah." It's like, "Good for you." Now do it 10,000 more times, and now you get the brand recognition.
Fair. So the last question then is for you, a personal question. What would you be doing if not content production? Or let's not even say that. Let's just leave it to like, what would you be doing if not this in your life right now?
I like my dream, like when you say
Mhm.
retirement, I don't really consider retirement because it's,
Mm.
you know, what is that? But but if I said, "Okay, I'm not gonna work all the time anymore," I would be a sci-fi writer. I love space operas where it's essentially a universe of content. It always goes back to content though, because I like it because it's like, when you create a space opera book, you could set these rules like here's the tech. And I talk about books. I read like Alistair Reynolds and Orson Scott Card and a bunch of British
And
authors.
the SpaceX website as well is a space
SpaceX
opera, as you mentioned.
website. It's not interesting enough. Actually, Elon, he names all his boats after, it's called the Culture series, and it's a
Mm,
fantastic series. It's about this, huge space civilization that has, basically made it. Like, they can do whatever they want, and they have these AI spaceships but they're personalities, and that's what he names his drone ships after, which I thought was
mm,
super cool. But the whole concept behind that is that you have a set universe, you have a shared history, you have set, tech. Usually you'll see tech. I like going back to like the Alien movie franchise, where it's like if you want to go from this place to this place, you have to get into the sleep chamber. Like that's consistent tech. Everybody does it. It's known. You don't have to explain it through every book because you already explained it once and now it's just consistent. So that allows the story to come alive instead of the explanation of whatever, which is really what people think sci-fi is. They think it's like, oh, it's about spaceships and aliens and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's actually taking a present day view of society and then expanding it into the future or expanding one element of it into the future. Like, what do we do today and how is it going to look for the people 100 years from now? Like, what impact is that going to have? And then you build your story off of what happened. That's what sci-fi is, which is why I like it. But anyways, I would write sci-fi. That's what I would
yeah, okay. I'm always fascinated by how people answer this last question, but yours is actually quite epic. Let's just put it like that. All right, well, that was the last question. And thanks so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. That was Mark de Grasse, who's the president at
do.
digitalmarketer.com. Yes. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun. Good questions.
Check out their website for more details, and we'll see you once again next month with another Marketer of the Month.